Right everyone, welcome to the first Fjuka road trip day. Thank you very much for coming. A few things going off today. There's Brad Hancock, who's a top match angler and a top specimen angler. We've got David Preston getting here when he gets here. Who knows when that'll be.
When he gets out of bed.
Yeah, if he's remembered to get out of bed. I'm going to be fishing up there. But above all, we've got world champion Tommy Pickering, who's going to kick off in a minute with a demo for you, talking through how he fishes commercial fisheries like this one, commercial snake lakes. You'll probably have noticed there's a few fish spawning on the lake. I came yesterday for a practice. I was fishing right across in the shallow water. There wasn't a sign of a fish spawning, so it's just a bit unlucky, I'm afraid. But if they calm down, we might be able to fish across later. If not, we're probably going to be limited in what we can show you because we don't like fishing in where the fish are spawning. Over there we've got some bait, which will give each of you a little item of bait to try at the end. We've also got a raffle for you to win 50 quid's worth of bait. I'll tell you about that once Tommy's finished his presentation. If anybody gets thirsty when that sun gets up, we've got a few cold drinks as well. Plus, Tom, you're selling your book over there, Born to Win. If you haven't checked it out, it's brilliant. So you can get a copy of that after Tommy's finished his demo shortly. So I think that's everything, is it?
Yeah.
Brill, right, I'll hand you over to Tommy for his talk on commercial fishing.
Morning everyone. Thanks very much for turning up. Also, I can't believe how many people's turned up. Absolutely awesome. Made up with it, to be honest with you. Wish we'd got some seats for you, so unfortunately we haven't. We're just a bit unlucky today. All fish are spawning. If you'd have been here an hour ago, it was like honestly ridiculous. I can't believe how many. I can't believe that Alex has paid for all these fish, to be honest with you. I can't believe how many's in here. So, yeah. I feel a little bit uncomfortable fishing today for them, to be honest with you. So, one, I don't think we'll catch any. Because I think when fish are spawning, they don't want to feed. And if we get one, it'll be a bonus. But more importantly, what I can do, I can show you the tactics of how I fish in a commercial fishery. And show you a few little tips and little things that might help you when you go to either fishing on here or go somewhere else. So what I'm going to show you is the way that I fish a commercial fishery and feed it. Because when you go fishing, there's 100% of fishing is this. 10% is preparation of your work at home. Tie your hooks, do your rigs and everything like that. Prepare everything at home, get your bait ready. If you're a pleasure angler, it don't matter as much as if you're fishing a competition. What you've got to remember in a competition, you get an hour to get from the clubhouse to your peg set up. So do a lot of your preparation at home. Do your hooks and your rigs and everything like that. 20% is preparation here at your peg. Get yourself comfortable, get yourself organised, get your tackle all the way around you, get your nets in a position where you're not moving, you're not getting off your box. So I think preparation here is really important. But the most important thing when you're fishing, 70% of fishing is swim management. Is what happens out there, what happens in your peg. Because I think fishing's the hardest sport in the world. Cricket, you can seat ball, golf, you can seat ball, football, you can seat ball, any other sport, you can see your object that you're trying to get. You can see the boxer, you can see the wrestler, you can see everything. We can't see our object ball. We can't see it. That's why I think angling is the hardest sport in the world, because we're trying to develop skills to catch something we can't see. And that's why we've got the best excuses as well, because we can make excuses simply because we can't see what we're trying to catch. So this is what I do when I go to a commercial fishing. The first thing is, this is called a snake lake, or like a canal lake. We call them snake lakes, and they're up and down the country. I'll be honest with you, they're not my cup of tea. I like more open, expanse water where I feel like I can go somewhere. Whereas I always feel a little bit hemmed in these, but even that, there's definitely a way, a technique and a way of catching fish. So what I'm going to show you is just what I do and to help you hopefully catch some more fish in the future. So the first thing is, where are there going to be the feeding fish? Because I'm not interested in the fish that are all over, I'm only interested in them fish that are feeding. And you'll see fish jumping and swirling and doing different things. Are they feeding? I don't know. So what I've got to do is try and find out where the feeding fish are. And usually that is a depth that you're looking for in the water, and every water will be a bit different. But if you come on this, the snake lake, there'll be 3 areas that you're going to fish. One will be the far bank, which is usually shallow. One is going to be the near bank, and one will be the middle. And on this type of fishery, the 3 parts are very important. One, your middle line. Your middle line is usually where it's flat and usually the deepest. Not always the best on a snake lake. It's not always the best area, but it's an area that you've always got to feed for a couple of reasons. One, so you can rest your other lines. That's one thing. And sometimes, especially in the winter, the fish will be in the deeper water. But you can bet your bottom dollar at this time of the year, the fish will be in 2 places. They'll be under the far bank, and later on in the match, they'll be in the side. Why? Because they're the shallowest bits, they're the furthest bits away from you. So, why do you think they're there? Well, I think there's 2 ways of looking at fishing. Summer fishing is, I think, start long, finish short. And what I mean by that is, start as long as you can in the summer, and then how many times have you been fishing and you've been feeding the side, and later on in the match it's black. But it's not black at the start of the competition or the start of your day's fishing, but they're always there at the end. It's almost like they come to clean up. So there's no point in starting there because there's no fish there. What you've got to do is finish there. So in the summer, start under that far bank, finish under here. Start long, finish short. However, in the winter, it's completely the opposite. You start short and finish long. Now your short line might be the middle and you're moving away with the fish because the fish don't want to feed. So if the fish don't want to feed, they back off your bait, and if they back off your bait, you've got to follow them. In the summer, they come for the bait. In the winter, they back off the bait. So what you've got to do is just work out what you've got to do. So this time of year in the summer, all I'm going to do, I'm going to start long and finish short in the side. So that's what I'm looking for. So first thing is this. I'm going to get my rigs and I'm going to get my rig set up. I've got everything else organised. I've got keep nets in front of me. I'm a right-handed person. If you're left-handed, just reverse everything that I'm going to talk about, because it does make a difference. That when I take people individually coaching, the first question I ask them is, are you right or left-handed? Because that makes a difference how I'm going to coach them. Because usually right-handed people have been coached by somebody right, but if you're left-handed, you've probably been coached by somebody who's right, and usually you're crisscrossing and crossing over. So, but I'm right-handed, so if you're left-handed, just reverse everything that I'm going to show you. So the first thing is, I need to approach and get my tackle ready for that far bank. And then all I'm going to do, I'm going to get a little float. I'm going to fish a soft elastic, just a 10 elastic. I'm not going to use anything, because one of the things most people do with elastic is they have it too strong. They have the elastic too strong. And what happens is, when the elastic's too strong, it just bounces like that. And if it bounces, your rod tip bounces and it wears the hook out. What you've got to do is use if you ever struggle about elastics, always use an elastic that is one softer than being stiff. I like lots of elastic to come out. I want to play the fish on the elastic. So when I come to this type of fishery, I'll probably start on a 10. But I base everything on my elastics around the size of the hook that I'm going to fish. That's really, really important to me. So if I'm using a size, let's say a size 18 hook, I want a size 10 elastic. A size 16 a 12, a size 14 hook, 14 elastic. And if you base it on that, you won't go far wrong. So a 10 elastic is to an 18, an 8 elastic is to a 20, and I know that that elastic then will cater for that hook. Because what you mustn't do, what you must not do is put a size 14 elastic on with a size 18 hook. You'll just wear it off and you'll bump the fish. I want elastic to come out. Never be afraid of having elastic out, because nowadays to shorten it, you've got your puller kits nowadays, which you can use to actually tighten it up and shorten it. So never be afraid of using a grade elastic. When I take people fishing, I want to see elastic come out. When you fish, I want to see the elastic come out and play the fish on the elastic. So that's one thing. Tool like you can see that I've got Dakar on. It doesn't really matter whether you've got Dakar on. I don't think it matters that much. It's personal choice whether you use the old style or whatever. Little float. Why is it a little float? Only like 4 number 10s. Why is it a little float? Well, I'm fishing in shallow water. You don't want a big float because the fish feel it, and I have a simple solution with floats. I want to use a float as light as possible to the conditions that I'm fishing. As light as possible to the conditions that I'm going to be fishing. I've just got 4 number 10 shot on, just spread out like that. It's not really important because there's not a lot of line. When I show you my middle depth, it's a bit different. It's a 4 or 6 inch hook length, doesn't really matter. What does matter though is the way that I'm going to be feeding it. But before I talk about the feeding, I'm just going to show you about plumbing up. So I've got my little rig on. When I put my plummet on now, I've got to find the depth. And one of the things you'll notice when I plumb up on this is I'm looking for different things. So when I put it on, one thing to do now is always take your time. Sorry, if I get anybody, I apologise. So now, all I'm going to do, I'm going to get to the spot, away from that tree, and then what I'm going to do, I'm looking for different spots in my peg. And I start, and what I'm looking for now is a depth. And I'm going to explain that depth to you. And I'm looking now, with that, actually that's quite nice, that's flat. That's as flat as anything, that. Now, I know that because I did it earlier. Right, and you can see that. Now what I'm looking for a slope, but there ain't one there. Because it's flat, I'm really happy with that. But when I'm fishing a snake lake, first of all, I'm looking to see where he can fish. Right, if he's next peg to me, I can't really go that side of the tree. If there's nobody there, I'm going to give myself 2 or 3 options now. I'm going to go up there, and I'm looking for different spots. There you go, and I'm looking for spots that are the same depth now. So I've got another one there. And find, on a snake lake, find a couple of, see all of a sudden that's shallower? So I might have to go there, look, and find the same depth. Now you say, well, what am I finding the same depth for? Otherwise you need more rigs set up. And all I'm doing is doing that. Fish it that then. So that's basically the depth. Now then, once you've got a rough idea, I'm going to show you now is some things that somebody's already asked me a question, and I'm going to clear that up for him now. That's the depth. Now what depth am I looking for? It's all about the fish. Now when at depths I really look for, over there I can't get that any shallower. So what I try and do, before I make my mind up what I'm doing, I look to see what the depth is. Because when I said to you that fish feed at a depth, they do. So in this area where we live, we've got lots of F1s, we've got lots of carp. If I'm fishing for F1s, I am looking for 15 inch of water, which is about that much. And when I'm fishing for carp, I'm looking for 12. Now you might think, well, that's only that much difference. Well, trust me, when you're fishing for F1s and carp, it makes a massive difference. So if I'm fishing for carp, and only carp, I set my rig at 12 inches and see if I can find it first. And if I can find 12 inches, that's perfect. And I just fish there. And usually when you're fishing for carp, you want to be tight against the bank. But when you're fishing for F1s, 12 inches is too shallow. You want it a little bit deeper. You want it at 15 inches, I think. I prefer to go 15 to 18 for F1s and 12 to 15 for carp. Why? I don't know. I've absolutely no idea. But all I know is it makes a massive difference. So when I'm fishing for F1s, I set it at 15 inches and I plumb, and wherever it is, that's where I fish. And I don't even care if it's away from the bank for F1s, but with carp, it's got to be against the bank. So carp, I look for 12 inches against the bank. For F1s, I look for 15 to 18 inches wherever it is, because I think the F1s are not comfortable fishing against the bank. So that's all that I do, but I can't find that because I ain't got it. So what I do, I go to the shallowest part that I can, which is, and I always check what I've got, that's about 22 inches deep, which sometimes can be too deep, and you might have to have a shallow rig set up, even in that shallow water. It makes a massive difference. So you can probably see from that, that's my setup. And that's all I need, a little float. All I want it to do is, when you get a bite, is to go under, and it makes a massive difference. The lighter you fish, you hook more bites. Now then, what is important, and is like so important, and this will be the biggest tip you'll have today. I won't be able to help you better than this today. That bit of line there is the most important part of that rig. That bit of line. And you might think, well, that's stupid, but trust me, that rig is so important. And the idea of that is to give you more fishing time in the water. If you have a long rig on, and most of you will, and most people do, is this. What happens is this. When you get a bite, because of all the extra line on the water, you strike like that, because you've got to pick that line up, to pick the float up to get to the fish. What happens is, right, you foul up fish, you strike your bait off, you've got to keep coming back and going forwards, backwards and forwards. But when you've got a short line on like that, what happens is, when it goes under, you go, and if it's not on, you're back to the feeding fish again. So when you get a bite, you go like that, and if it's not on, and when it's on, your elastic will come out. And that's why you have a little bit of line on, not a lot. So how long should it be? Well, it's simple, it's about the wind more than anything, and the rules of the fishery. Because some rules of fishery, they have like 8 inches, a foot, or whatever it is. So yes, sometimes you've got to look at the rules. If they've got a rule of 8 inches or 12 inches, then usually that's how long it's going to be. But what I always say is, I have a ruler, there's a ruler on there, and that is 8 inches. And why is it that long? Simple, because fishery agriculture, that's the limit. So I always...
On that, it's what, when I'm fishing like in close on my margin, it's one of the things I've got into a routine of doing. On my lash, when I measure it, I always have from the tip of my float to my connector, I have 12 inches.
Yeah.
But it's what I do is I have a couple of back shot, number 8 back shot.
Yeah.
So I've only got like 6 inch
Yeah.
of the actually touching the water. So I tip-X my back shot, so I can see my back shot, they're just touching the water. Is that something that you would...
Right. I use a back shot a lot, but not for this type of fishing, because I want to hook the fish.
Yeah.
And usually when they have a back shot on that type of fishing, it's to keep the line straight there.
Yeah.
But me personally, I don't use back shots for this. I prefer to have the line shorter, because I'm above it. And especially if your line is a foot, it's usually too long. You'll finish up, especially when you're in the side, which I'm going to come to in a bit. But when you're fishing in the side, it's even more important. But I'll come to that in a bit. But I don't have back shots for this type of fishing. I prefer to have the shorter line, because you're above the fish. And when you've got back shotting, I'm not a fan of it. Ask another angler and they're fans of it. I'm not. It's just what I prefer to have a shorter line personally. And so the idea of that then is so that when you get a bite, you strike into your fish and you're dropping and lifting all fish. But if you have it any longer, what happens is you'll get caught in tree, you get caught in grass and everything like that. And it's like when you're fishing inside, because what happens is with this, what I do, if you're fishing across and you're catching and you'll think that's the perfect depth and you're happy with that depth and you're catching your fish on, then what you do, if I start catching across and I'm not missing bites, I think that's the perfect depth. I come in, I feed it, what I do, I put something on and then I come in the side. And what I do, I look for that depth. There. And I look for the same depth in the side, and it could be there or wherever it is, and wherever that depth is, I feed there. Why? Look at that fish moving out. Why? Because if they're feeding on that depth over there, they'll be feeding on that depth when they come in later on. It's to help you, and you haven't got to make another rig up, which is even better for me. So look for the same depth in the side. So if you're fishing across there and you think, well, I'm not missing bites, that's perfect, that tells me that's the correct depth to fish. Look for the same depth in the side. So while I'm showing you here and why you've just asked that question, right, I'm going to answer it probably a bit better. So when I'm fishing over there, I'm not going to put a bait on yet. The way I lay in is this. So when I go across, I'm now, because you've got bankside everything and I'm trying to get it close, what I'm trying to do is ship it across like this, and then when I get to the spot, if you just hold it just out at water, the float like that, it'll come onto the spot you want to fish. Give it a couple of seconds and you're fishing. So what you do, you push it, lift it, 5 seconds, lower it into the fish, because you want it to go onto the slope like that. You don't cast it in, you don't place it, you just lift it and let it do the work itself. However, when you're on the same depth in the edge, it's completely different. When you're fishing the same depth in the side, what you do, you put it in like that. When you get to your spot, you hold it and let it come in, and then 5 seconds it's settled, and what you do, you put the pole to the bank. Why? One, it's covered down the bank, it's not over the heads. That's one thing, but the most important thing is when you lift and there's a fish on, it will swim out. If you go like that and strike, it'll go through all the snags and all the rubbish. But if you do it like that, you lift, it will swim out. It always swims out, so you're in free space then. So them's the two ways to lay it in at that depth. So what we're going to do now, we're going to show you. And like I said, I'm a bit worried about this because one, I don't want to foul hook a fish, and two, so how are we going to feed the line? Well, you've got your rig set up, you've got it all organised. How are we going to feed it? Most people love them. Most people love them. They want throwing away. Alright? They're alright for filling your tackle box up. Very rarely I use one of them. Saying that, I've just come back from Hungary, and we had to use one of them, and we fed 20 tins of corn in 4 hours. Big tins, 8 litres of corn. 2 of them are cast. Like, honestly, it was like ridiculous. I've never seen out like it. It was like, I've never seen as much corn in my life, but you had to do. It was ridiculous, like stupid. But the only time I ever use one of them nowadays is to put some ground bait in. Why? Because there's too much bait. I see, certainly club anglers, the worst thing you can do is put one of them in. One, why would you put all that much bait in one swoop? Why would you? I mean, that's only half full. Look at it. Why would you put all that in one swoop? Oh, fish just sit there, I don't want that, it's got a hook in it, I'll just eat all this. You know, it just doesn't make any sense. You're not making the fish competitive. It doesn't make any sense. Even that. Besides, that's not very big, is it? That's not a very big pot. Them's 4mm fishery pellets, that. That's 4mm fishery pellets. 72 pellets in that. Well, you won't chuck 72 pellets in, there ain't 72 fish there, so they're just going to take the time and eat them and fill themselves up and think, oh, I don't need any more. Why, 72 in that? You don't need that. And most people think that's a right small pot. It ain't, it's a big pot to me. Even in the sun, you won't throw 72 pellets, you won't loose feed that. It's just ridiculous. And that's the biggest mistake people make when they fish a commercial fishery. The idea on a commercial fishery is simple. Feed, catch a fish. Feed, catch a fish. Feed, catch a fish. Feed, catch a fish. That's all it's about. It's as simple as that. Every time you feed, you want to catch a fish. So, look at that. And that's in summer. You watch all the good anglers and they all use little pots. I mean, crikey, if I fill that up with fishery pellets, there's still loads there. There's still probably 30 pellets. You'd never lose feed 30 pellets. And look at the size of that. So, it's the biggest single mistake people make. The single biggest mistake people make. Put a pot full and think that'll last a couple of hours. No, it don't. They eat it straight away and it drives too many fish in your peg. You foul hook them, you can't catch them. The idea, feed a little. When I was a kid that big, a long time ago, right, the best way of feeding were little and often, and when I'm dead and 50 years after that, the best way of feeding will be little and often. Always has been and it always will be. So all we're going to do now is show you how we're going to feed across. So the first thing is this elastic's doing me head in. Okay, first thing is to put a bait on. Now I'm going to put a 5mm Fjuka bait on, and I'm going to put a natural one on, and I'm just going to hook it like that. Don't have to band it or out like that, I'm just going to hook it like that. Now then, one of the biggest things anglers make is they hook the keep net when they're filling the pot up. Most people drop it inside, fill it up. After today, you'll never ever hook your keep net again, trust me. It's full of rubbish, all snags and everything like that. So, in fact, I'm going to show you with a different rig, because that's easy, that one. I'm just going to explain it better with a different rig. So I've got my deeper rig here, which is my middle rig, which I'm going to talk about in a bit. So I'm going to just put this big pot on just to show you. So the amount of people that hook the keep net, I've done it, we've all done it. It's not quite right, this rig. So the first thing is, you get your rig and you hold the hook there 2 inches above your bait. You go up your pole and you put your bait in, whatever you want to put in, bit of ground bait, into your pot. When you ship it out, then all you do is you use that weight of the thing and you let it go and it goes past all your rubbish. That's all you've got to do, and you'll never hook your keep net again. And that's all that you've got to do. Put your pole together and ship out. So all you do is hold it together like that. Make sure you've got a little arc, 2 inches above your hook, little arc like that, and when you let it go, it goes past all your rubbish. It goes past your keep nets, all the snags and everything like that that's in the water. And you should never ever hook your keep net again, ever. I've been told by loads of people that's the best tip they've ever had. That's obviously got a sad life. So, all we're going to do now is this. I'm going to put a bait on. I'll put a bait on you can see to start with. Like that. Just going to get my little pot. I'm not going to put a lot in. I mean, look how many I'm putting in. Hardly any. Just going to put a little bit of ground bait in. I don't know why, but like that. Let it go like that, so it's past all the rubbish. And then what you must do now, you must keep your pot in an upright position, and you must take your time. That's really, really important. And all you're going to do then is ship it out with your rig. Sorry, can I get on my roller so I can put that roller back, Tom, please? And then at least I can show them better. Right at back, that's it. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And then all I'm going to do, I'm going to ship it out. My first thought is to feed. Now I've got my spot where I'm feeding. You take your time. When you get to your spot, the first thing I'm thinking about is feeding. So I turn it over. I touch the water like that. With the pot, lift it up, tap that and it's come out. Then I lift the rig out just so I can see the float. For a few seconds, it goes in a straight line, and then the feeding fish. I've got a nice short line, so float goes under, and I'm in rubbish like, but. And all you're going to do, a few seconds, hold it, and you're on your bait. See what I mean? You get a bite, you get a lift, and that's what you're doing. All you're doing is you've got more fishing time in water. If I strike like that, oh, look that's what happens. All right? It wraps round. Sometimes you foul up fish, and you strike your bait off. That's exactly what happens when you strike. So the biggest lesson you're ever going to have is I'm going to give you more fishing time in water. Oh, look at that. How many times has that happened? Yeah, I couldn't have done that any better really, could I, to be honest with you. So now you've got feeding fish out there and you've got that to unravel. There's no worse, is there? Now, there's 2 foot of line there. How can 2 foot of line cause all this problem? But it can, and it does. 2 foot of line. You won't think it were possible. So what's happening now is, one, you're not fishing, so you're not feeding your peg, and you're not catching any fish. So done it. Back in again. Ship it out, pass your rig. Everything, just take your time. Just take your time and ship it out on the water. The reason why you ship it out along the water is so it doesn't spin up. When you get to your spot, take your time. First thought, feed. In water, lift it out, tap, comes out. Hold it out at water to feeding fish. And that is how you fish this type of fishing. And when you get a bite, if it goes under, you lift, not on, fishing again. You get more fishing time in water, like that. See? Now these are not feeding fish, right? But these are fish that hopefully we might catch one, but I don't think we'll catch a fish, I really don't. So you sat there waiting for it to go under. It's gone under. See, that's a moving fish. And all you're doing, you're trying to read what happens now. Now what happens is, because you're fishing in that shallow water, the fish come in and they'll move about. You'll see them moving, you get liners and indications. So if you can just not strike, and it's not, I'm not saying it's easy, because it's not, but you get more fishing time. I mean, you've just fed that. If you get indications, the fish are there feeding, so why do you want to keep coming backwards and forwards? I'm getting more fishing time in the water because I'm not striking, all I'm doing is lifting. And if you can do that, that is the biggest lesson you'll ever learn from today. The biggest lesson. So all I'm doing, fishing away there. Now then, what happens is, because there's 2 or 3 spots that you can fish, you might have to keep swapping about, and you can also use different baits. You might have Fjuka bait on one, you might have different pellets on another, but at least you've got that option, and that you've got the same depth. You don't have to keep changing rigs and things like that. You see what I mean? 3 times I've lifted up then, but I'm still fishing. I'm still fishing on that bait. Again, picture I'm fishing where that grass is, but that's what happens when you fish this type of fishery. What happens is when you get these types of pegs, you'll find out that there'll be a spot that you'll find out that's clear and everything. I mean, some fisheries allow you to go around to clear it up. Obviously they don't here. So that's one line that is really important, and it don't matter how many times you lift it and strike, don't matter. So you might be thinking, right, so when do I feed again if I don't catch a fish? When you stop getting indications. That's the key. If you're getting little dinks, indications and everything like that, I won't worry about it. The moment it stops, come back and feed again. Now all these are not feeding fish, trust me, these are fish that are spawning. We shouldn't be doing this really. Same routine, apart from that piece of grass, that's it. But the reason these fish are there is probably because of that grass, that reeds and trees and everything like that. Right, any questions at the moment on this?
How long would you leave it on it?
Well, like I just said, it's about indication. If I'm getting indications, I'd keep doing it until I stop getting indications, then I'd feed again. Remember, the fish come to feed. They're only coming to feed, and what happens is, if you're getting indications, you're not catching them, and then it stops, come back and feed again. And that's the best way to explain it. So that's one line. That's one line, but this is the most important line on this type of fishing. It's the most important line because this is where you're going to catch most of your fish on this type of lake. However, these are the lines. So while I'm fishing this line, I'm always going to be feeding another line. And what I do then is, yeah, it's impossible this because of the fish. So when I'm fishing this other line, when I'm fishing over there, I'm always feeding my other line, and my other line will be down the middle. And what I do, I always pick, I'm doing that. Now you've noticed that I've come in with a pole before I do it, right? That's because I don't want to do it when I'm holding that long pole because they'll go all over. So what I'm going to be doing, while I'm going to be fishing there, I'm going to be fishing like 5mm, 4mm, 5mm pellets. And what I do, I flick them in like that, and I pick a spot that I'm happy with. Then I'm going to use that shadow of that tree because it's dark and I can see the float better. But I never feed when I'm holding the long pole. I always feed when I come in because it makes it nice and simple. Then later on, after halfway through the match, I'll start feeding my inside, like that. I don't even think about it for 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And what I do, I like to do that. Why? Because it makes a noise. And that's going to bring the fish in. It's going to go. Fish respond to noise and it'll come in. However, when I'm going to fish that, I'm going to put a pot on. And it's a bit like this next line I'm going to show you. So I've got my inside rig and I've got my far side rig, exactly the same rig. But a lot of people want to catch fish down the middle. So the middle a little bit different.
What's the length of your latch on that one?
Ah, I've left that a reason so I can show you. So first of all, I'm going to plumb the middle. Always pick a spot that you're going to aim to. Now I'm going to aim for that little shrub there, smack in front of me. And all I'm going to do, I'm going to tuck the pole into my side there. I've got my elbow on end of the pole, so I'm always going to the same spot, and I hold the pole like that. Not like that, and not like that. Now why don't I hold it like that? Why don't I hold it with some pole behind me? I don't, because that's the weakest part of a pole. And your elbow goes through that. So I always go to the elbow because that's a ferrule. It's the strongest part. So my elbow wants to be on that. And it's a great marker. It marks it. I put that inside of my body like that, and I'm always going to the same spot. So I line it up, put it in like that, just shuffle it back just to see if it's flat. And I know for a fact, like that, that's as flat as it gets, snooker table almost that. So really you can fish anywhere there, it'll not make any difference, you've got to make the bait come. So when I'm plumbing, where do I plumb to? Now you can see that now is to the bottom of the body. Now that's a bit too deep for me on a flat bottom. When I'm fishing across and it's on a slope, that's perfect. So when it's on a slope, I always plumb to there, the bottom of the body. However, when I'm fishing on a flat bot, I want it to the bottom of the bristle. I want it to there. Just so I've got that little bit security. Why? Because you don't foul up fish then. So plumb it up, take my time, elbow, like that. There you go. And I know that's flat now and I'm happy with that. So, that's just a normal standard rig. Now there's a few things that's wrong with that. My hook length, 6-inch hook length because I'm fishing on the bottom. Because of the depth, I've had to go 4 and 4. Normally, if it's any deeper, that's 6 and 6. In other words, my hook length 6 inches, 6 inches between the two shot, and 6 inches between that. 6, 6, 6. But in this case, it's too narrow. Your bolt shot will be up here somewhere, which is no good. So, on my float, I've got 3 rubbers, you can see. But that's wrong. I'll be foul looking fish all day. And it's not long. It's only 1.5 foot, but what'll happen is the wind will blow it, I've got to pick it up and strike. So I can't stress enough to you how important that length of line is. So all I'm going to make it is when it's flat calm and the rules allow it, 6 inches, when it's windy, 1 foot, and when it's a bit like this, 9 inches in middle. And all you do, and the idea of that is 1, you don't foul up fish, 2, you're not striking your bait off, but the most important thing, you're getting more fishing time in the water. You get more fishing time. If you've got more fishing time in the water, you're going to catch more fish. Look at that. What else is wrong? Anyone tell me what else is wrong with that?
Would you use a back shot on it?
No, not for I don't. I'm not a back shot man.
No.
I'm not saying it's not right. I'm not going to argue with brilliant fishermen that use back shots. The only time I use back shots is if when I'm roach fishing somewhere and or it's windy. Might put a back shot and just to hold it, but I'm not a back shot man. Only for roach fishing, bream fishing, natural fishing. It's just a personal thing. You know, a lot of my mates use back shots. Don't quite get it, me son. But back shots are important when it's windy, fishing for roach and skimmers, but not for this type of fishing. But the other thing that's wrong is that thing. It's too big. Correct. It's too big. So, where's my pot's gone? There you go. Most people make that mistake. It's not often we say it, but it's too big. You got it anyway. So, tell you what, I'm not going to put that in there, am I? Right. I can't stress enough how you go watch any good anglers and they never use big pots. Oh, sorry, they do sometimes, but very, very rare. So, this is more conventional fishing. It's a little bit different fishing. So all I'm going to do, I'm just going to put a natural one on. I'm hoping we can get an F1 down middle like this. So all I'm going to do, I'm just going to get some micros, micro Fjuka, put them in like that. Not many. Remember that bit there where you let it go and it goes past all your rubbish, like that. Again, take your time. Ship it out on top of water like that. You float just nice and steady. Elbow, elbow. First thing, I'm looking for my elbow. Elbow, elbow, elbow. Line it up with my marker. Tip it over. One swoop. Now then, the next thing is where it's gone in. I want you to hold the float above the water. Just touching bottom of the float, touching water for 10 seconds. That's called the 10-second rule. And the idea of that is then it'll go under and it'll lay in a straight line where you've just put your feed in, and then you can put it to the feeding fish. And that's all. What you've done then, you've fed it, your hook bait's in the middle of that feed, and hopefully the fish will come in and you're fishing away. And then when you get a bite, if it goes under, you go like that, and if it's not on, you're fishing again. And trust me, when you get a fish, if you go like that, elastic will be out before you get that far. And that's all that you're trying to do. You're trying to have more fishing time in the water. His biggest problem, of course, is the fish are not feeding. And I can't really do a lot about that today. So, commercial feeder fishing. Commercial fishing is all about feeding the right spots, and these spots I'm showing you are the spots on this type of fishing that you're going to do. So you've 3 lines on this type of fishing: middle, far bank and the inside. Any questions, anybody?
When you're fishing far bank, are you feeding into middle by hand? Are you using micros or side?
Usually when you're feeding down middle, you can't throw your micros, so you're normally feeding 4 or 5 mil pellets. Just where you can throw them and fish with them comfortably. But always feed them when you've got your pole, when you've come in. Never feed while you're out there.
So then you use micros.
You can throw pot, yeah. If you know the venue and you need to use micros, then what I would suggest you do is feed it with the rig that you're using across. Do you know what I mean?
Feed it halfway.
Yeah, and when you come in, just top it up, fish it, then come back and go across. I tell you something, it's a long time since I've seen as many fish spawning as this. I mean, it's not even a patch on what it was earlier. I mean, the fact we can't get a bite like this is crackers. But I'm not surprised. But once I start feeding this line with a pot, I'll stop throwing it in. Right, because what I want to do, by throwing it in, I want to make a noise, I want to draw the fish in, but when I start catching, I usually want to go... See, that was just a liner then. I want to get them competing with that channel of bait going through, because what happens is eventually they'll get used to it. So all you're going to do is this. You come in, check your hook bait, it's okay. 2 inches above, a little arc, put some micros in, ship it out past your keep nets and everything like that, put your pole together, and everything's take your time. Pole in the right position. First thing is elbow, 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 elbow. Line it up, tip it in, 10-second rule. And all you're trying to do is put your hook bait in the feed. That's all you're trying to do, nothing more than that. 10-second rule, and you're fishing.
Why are you using different coloured baits from your hook bait?
I just like to mix them up, because some days they want different colours. I always like a mixture. I'll be honest with you, I'm one of them people that it's like when I'm fishing for natural fish and I put casters, worms, pinkies in, I'm one of them people that if the fish don't want it, it won't put them off, they just won't eat it.
So would you try a different hook bait?
Yeah, you can change your different hook baits then. I like a mixture. I don't like the same colour, because one of the reasons for that is one of the places I go to, fish like different colours, and all these lakes on here, I bet you find out that each lake have got a different colour. I know that from going to Lindholm a lot. You've got all these different lakes, and some lakes orange is better, red's better, yellow's better. So unless you know what it is, I like to give them a choice, and I think if they don't want it, they'll just not eat it.
Yeah, but you bait what you've got on there, would you change it?
Yes, I check. If I can't catch it, keep changing it till I find out what they want, or if they want one.
And how long would you wait for that?
Every cast. If I went in now with like a brown one, next cast I'd probably put a yellow one on it and a different colour. The trouble is, like I said, I'm not expecting getting a bite.
Yeah.
If we're going to catch one, we're going to catch it across. Yeah. On this line, I always go for, if you're with my box and my rigs, a bulk and 2 droppers, just easier. It's just what I think is easier. Well, you can. Well, the thing is, it's like if I go roach fishing, I like a bulk and 3 droppers, but that's because the fish feed differently. They feed in the bottom 2 foot, so you want it to drop. But what you're trying to do here is get the fish come to your bait, and you might say, well, why don't you just put bulk together? It gets down quicker. It's not the same. There's not. Sometimes I don't have shades of grey in my life. It either works or it don't. And the thing is, for me, the best way that I've caught most fish is a bulk and 2 droppers. So that's where I use it. I'm not saying it's other people do, but it's the best way for me. Yeah. That I find is the best way. And I just find that that's the best way. So lads, what I'm going to show you now is just a quickie. So I fished over there and I didn't catch out. So what would I do if I couldn't catch out there? Well, first thing I'd do, I'd try somewhere else. And what I mean by that is, because you've got options here, if you think, right, I've either got to rest that one, or I'm not catching anything, or it's snaggy, then just move. And the idea of plumbing up before the start is so you can move. So you might go, and this is the beauty about Snake Lakes, you can actually, you can actually move. You've plumbed up, you've found the depth, and it's same thing. Look at that. But they're not, I don't think they're feeding fish, you know, they're just. But I'm fishing a different spot, you've got the same rig on. Because what we do when we come on this type of fishery, we'll have 3 or 4 rigs set up for this. Because there's that much rubbish that you never know what's going to happen. But that's the idea. We've got 3 or 4 spots, so sometimes you can fish different baits in different spots, but you can rest your peg as well. But it's easy to do. Any more questions, everybody?
Is there an upper limit on how many swims you do? Can we put far back?
You can do as many as you can.
Right.
But I don't. I 2 or 3
So feet or swims?
swims. No, I look for 2 or 3 spots because it gives me an option as well, either to rest it.
Or straight from 45 degrees or
Yeah. Whatever's comfortable. Whatever's comfortable.
Right. You thinking, Tommy, some more questions you want?
Yeah, just keep firing them if any questions. It's
Lovely. Well, if that's it, I think we'll give you a round of applause because that was a brilliant presentation. Absolutely awesome. Loads there.